And good afternoon, everyone. This is a DTA Wales webinar as part of our Community Buildings Hub series, looking at different ways that we can improve the energy efficiency of our community buildings across Wales. We are part of the Eich programme, which is a programme run by Development Trust Association Wales, which is a member-led and independent organisation in Wales, helping and supporting social businesses and organisations and enterprises across Wales. And Eich is the programme which is helping groups to, in Wales, become more environmentally sustainable, tackle climate change, particularly those that maybe haven't really done this before and want to make a kind of first start. It's a mentoring program, so we try to match the needs of the group with mentors that have that kind of experience and give them a few days of their time to kind of help them move forward with their climate projects. So today's session is all about understanding your energy report or your energy survey. So I imagine that many of you will, or maybe all of you will, have a community building of some kind that you're looking after, and perhaps you've already had a community energy survey either through Eich or from somewhere else. And so, and often these reports that you get are very detailed and quite in-depth. So we thought we'd put on this webinar to allow people to learn a little bit more about how to understand it and interpret it. So we have Elfed Lewis with us today, and he's our Community Buildings Hub coordinator at DTA Wales. And so I'll pass over to him now to lead us through the next hour or so. Okay, thanks very much, Elfed.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you. I'll just get my slides up. Just to introduce myself, I work on the Community Buildings Hub as part of the Eich programme. But I also do energy reports, so I write energy reports. So I've lost count of how many energy reports I've done in Wales, but quite a sizable number. So what I'm going to go through here today is an example of an energy report, what's in it, and how we can make best use of the energy reports. Let me just share my screen. Okay, hopefully that's coming up for everyone.
You'll be taking questions at the end, Elfed?
I will be taking questions at the end, yeah. Absolutely. 1 second. Sorry, there's someone mowing their lawn outside, so I'm just going to go and shut the door. Just give me 1 second. Apologies for that. Okay. So this session today is part of the Community Buildings Hub. You can get to the Community Buildings Hub from that link, or if you just Google Community Buildings Hub or DTA Wales, you should be able to find a link to that. Hopefully someone from the DTA team will also copy and paste that link into the chat during this presentation. So on the Community Buildings Hub, there's a series of articles, guides on different aspects of decarbonising or lowering the energy bills of your community building. So there's guides on insulation, how insulation works, what it does, how much you should put on, how to calculate carbon, which you need quite often for applying with grants, solar, batteries, heating systems, and also there's an article on there about where you can find grants to pay for some of these interventions in your community buildings. So please do take a look at some of the documents on there. Hopefully it'll be helpful for you as you start on your energy efficiency journey. So what we're going to look at today is we're going to look at an example energy report. So I'm just going to go through some of the main sections of the energy report, what's included, what it's telling you, and how to interpret the information that's in there. We'll go through what an energy report is useful for, but also what the limitations of the energy report, what it's not telling you, and things you need to be mindful of as you work through it. Quite often, when I send an energy report, the first question that comes back is, what should we do first? or what should we do? So we'll look at that as well. How to get started, how not to sort of get bogged down on the fact that maybe there's £100,000 worth of stuff that ideally would need doing on a building. How can we start off with some of the small bits that will get you going on your project? And yeah, the whole session really is about how to make best use of the energy report. Now, some of you on the call might not have an energy report, so we'll also discuss if you don't yet have one, how can you get hold of an energy report? And then at the end, we can also do some questions as well. If you do have some burning questions and you're worried about forgetting, please do type it into the chat. I will refer back to the chat as well when we get to the Q&A section. So what's contained in an energy report? So I'm going to go through an energy report that I actually didn't write. This is an organisation that I'm a trustee of. I requested an energy report for Oasis Barmouth, and someone else came, did the energy report and reported and built this for us. I didn't want to use another group's energy reports because, yeah, I'd be worried about, having to ask permission and being worried about people seeing the bills. But this is one I'm a trustee of, so I'm quite happy to sort of share this one. So it starts off with an executive summary that essentially just tells you a little bit about your building, which you'll already know because it's your building. It'll give you some totals, so how much money you spend on energy per year. This is sometimes actually a shock for people. They pay maybe an electricity bill, maybe a gas bill or an oil bill. They pay it monthly, or they pay for the oil whenever they need it. And just having it in black and white, how much you actually spend on your energy can sometimes be a little bit of a shock when you total everything up. And also how much your annual carbon emissions are for your building as well. And then as we get through the executive summary, it does start highlighting some, sort of top level things that you could be doing in your building to save money. This is still part of the executive summary. This is written again with slightly more detail at the end of the report as well. But we can see that for this particular building, one of the things is to simplify the electricity metering layout. This is a building that used to be subdivided into different units. There were 12 electricity meters in the building, and it was all owned by one group. So they were paying 12 sets of standing charges, having to deal with, making 12 payments every month. And it was far, far too complicated. So one of the recommendations that came back was simplify it. Get rid of as many of those meters as you can. Maybe put one 3-phase meter in to cover the whole lot. Replace a few single glazed windows and doors that were in the building. Installing curtains, if there's enough evening use to justify that, just to keep some of that heat in the winter. Improving draft proofing, more smart heating controls, changing some LEDs and lighting controls. Sort of when you go into a corridor and the light comes on magically, you don't have to switch it on and off, and then it makes sure that you don't accidentally leave it on all night. So what we can see in this table is the financial savings for doing those measures. So adding internal wall insulation would have saved about £1,000 a year off of that £10,800 annual electricity cost. It also gives you the total amount of carbon that each measure saves you, as well as the total amount of energy that it's saving as well. This information is quite important if you're applying for grants. The grant funding agency will want to know what is the impact of the measure that you're proposing. So if you're asking them for £20,000 to insulate the walls, they'll want to know how much money this is saving off your bill, in this case, £1,000, and also how much carbon it's saving, in this case, 0.88 tonnes of carbon per year. So do make sure when you apply for grants and you're telling them how much money you want, what the benefit is, so that the grant agency is able to score your application correctly. So definitely put the financial and the carbon savings in your grant applications. So these are energy efficiency opportunities, so saving energy on the building. The next page then is renewable energy opportunities. In this case, an air-to-air heat pump was recommended for the building, as well as a solar PV array as well. And we can see that the financial benefit for this particular building of the solar array is quite large. Off of a £10,800 bill, £5,000 to £7,000 is what they're estimating the annual saving in costs would be for this building. And 7.5 tons of carbon as well out of 9. So quite a significant decrease, and would take the building about 80% towards the goal of being net zero, just with that one measure alone. As we then carry on through the report, the next section is data analysis. Now, this particular building is purely electric. There was no gas in Barmouth Oasis, their building. So I've just put another report, and I've blanked out the name just to maintain their privacy, of another group that actually has electricity and gas in their report as well, just so you can see the contrast between these two reports. So for this particular piece of analysis, what the survey will do is take your bills, total up the amount of kilowatt hours, calculate the carbon emissions and the annual costs of each measure. The one on the left, Barmouth Oasis, is fairly straightforward because they only use electricity, and it just totals up energy, carbon emissions, and cost. The one on the right does break it down into, how much energy are we getting from electricity, how much energy we're getting from gas, the percentages for those two, but also how much emissions each measure creates, as well as how much cost it incurs as well. And then what we can see from those pie charts at the bottom is that LPG makes up 34% of this group's end use, but only 16% of their costs. So gas obviously is a reasonably cheap way of heating a building, but it's not great from a carbon emissions perspective. So if we're recommending something like a heat pump, which uses electricity, we need to make sure that we're making enough savings on their electricity bill to justify the slightly extra cost of using electricity as a heating solution. And that's very, very doable, by the way. But that's the sort of what we're trying to get from these reports is a sense of where you're getting in energy from, where your emissions are going from as well, so that we can then make recommendations about changes to your building. So next we come into the main part of the building, where we actually start looking at different parts of your building. So the report starts off by looking at the walls in the building. So it just describes what's there now. As we can see in this particular building, it's just 2 layers of brick with no cavity and no insulation at all. So a lot of the heat in this building is being lost through the walls. And then it carries on to then make some recommendations. So internal or external wall insulation, both work in similar ways. They trap the heat inside the building. External wall insulation is obviously a lot less disruptive, but does require scaffolding if it's if it's more than 1 stories high. Internal wall insulation is a lot more disruptive, but sometimes is simpler to get approval for. You don't need planning to do internal wall insulation, for example, unless you've got a Grade 2 listed building. Similarly, if your property goes straight onto a pavement, you'd have to get permission from the council, I believe, owns the pavements, to actually extend the line of your building, further on into the pavement. So here it's giving a rough idea of costs as well. For internal wall insulation is suggesting £80 to £100 per square metre. And it's giving you, some guidance in terms of the thickness of the solid wall insulation. In this case, the surveyor is recommending about 100 millimeters of internal wall insulation on this building. They're also in the middle paragraph there, suggesting different types of insulation materials you can use on the building. And he specifically says that the materials like Kingspan or Celotex are not recommended for solid brick or stone walls, and that maybe something more like a wood fibre board would be more appropriate for this particular building. For yours, that might be different. You might recommend something like Kingspan or Celotex boards, but do read the fine print. Do make sure that you check what type of insulation he's recommending as well, so that you place the appropriate insulation in. There's a conclusion there at the end where the assessor suggests that internally or externally insulating this particular building would save you about £1,000 a year and 0.88 tonnes of carbon per year. And then we go on from there to look at roof insulation. This particular building had already had the roof re-insulated recently to a fairly high standard. But yeah, there would be a section in your building if you have no loft insulation, probably recommending loft insulation, the cost of the loft insulation and how much money this would be saving you. And we carry on like this really through the rest of the building, the glazing, draft proofing, new doors, and so on. Ventilation improvements to your building, where you're generating your heating and your hot water, and what solutions you could use instead of your current heating systems if it needs replacing. As well as lighting, LED lighting improvements, for example, and electricity use of the appliances in your building. Two sections I just wanted to highlight just because they're a little bit more detailed. The first one is the air source heat pumps. There's different kinds of air source heat pumps. There's the ones we're using at homes, which is the air to water heat pumps. It takes energy from the air outside, moves that into water that it then distributes around your home through the radiator system. But there's a second type of heat pumps, which is called an air-to-air heat pump. These take heat from outside air, and then they actually blow hot or cold air into a building. Air-to-air heat pumps are slightly less efficient than a well-installed air-to-water heat pump. But I actually am quite a fan of air-to-air heat pumps for community buildings, just because they can more rapidly heat up the space. So if you've got a building that's only used maybe a couple of evenings a week, maybe 3 or 4 evenings a week, maybe one morning, a traditional air-to-water heat pump, you'd have to leave it running the whole time, all day, every day, in order to keep the building at a good temperature. Whereas an air-to-air heat pump, you can just have it on for half an hour or an hour before the meeting starts in the building, and it'll quickly bring the building up to temperature. So it's often a better match for the way we use community buildings, whereas air-to-water heat pumps tend to be a better match for people's homes when they want the home to be warm the whole time. So there's some information there about different types of heat pumps, what the cost of installation of these different heat pump types are, and then if they're recommending it for your particular building, they'll also make an estimate about how much money or carbon it might save, or if it's maybe borderline, they might suggest that it maybe cost you slightly more or slightly less as well. And then the second part that's quite detailed is the solar section. Just because there's quite a lot of calculations involved in suggesting what type of solar array is most suitable for a community building. What we can see here is that the surveyors included a photo of the roof of the building. It happens to be a flat roof on this building, giving you some background information about some of the approvals you'll need, like from the local distribution network operator. And then there's a table there in the bottom right where the surveyor makes some recommendations for this building. He's made 2 suggestions here. either a 40 or a 20 kilowatt solar array. He suggested costs for that solar array of 48,000 for the 40, 22,000 for the 20 kilowatt. And he's estimated as well what the savings would be if you were to install a solar system on this particular building. As well as carbon emissions as well, obviously. Now, these are all recommendations. You don't have to go with these recommendations if you think 30 kilowatts is better, or 50 or 10. It is totally up to yourself. But these give you a rough rule of thumb of different types of solar arrays and how they would affect your running cost, your bills every year. Now, on this particular building, we did actually install a solar array. We spent £48,000 on the dot on the solar array for this building, and we did manage to put in a 47.5 kilowatt array. So we were able to request a grant, suggest that we wanted to spend £48,000, and by running a competition, asking 3 companies to bid for the work, we were able to find one company that were willing to put 47 kilowatts in for the same price. So you can often do that as well. Take the report as a baseline for the grants that you apply for, and then try and get maximum value for that grant by asking more than one company to bid for the work. And here are some of the photos of the solar panels that we installed in this building. As you can see, it's a large flat roof. I forget the exact number of solar panels on there. I think there was probably slightly over 100 solar panels in total on the roof. And then the other bits, the battery and the inverter, went inside the building in the utility, in the plant room. So what are energy reports useful for? They're particularly useful for applying for grants. The people who award the grant want to see that you've done your homework, that you've actually got some expert advice, along with some costings, so that you've got a good sense of how much money you need to actually implement some of the interventions you want to make on your building. And so, please do always include the energy reports with grants that you apply for. Rough costings, obviously, for all the different things you might do to your building. If so, when you want to have conversations, maybe with if you've got a board or volunteers that work on the building, you've got some sense of what each of these things will cost. So you can have a discussion about what things you think need doing, whether they offer value for money, whether you want to pay for some of these things yourself, whether you want to look for grants, or maybe a mixture of both. And then they obviously give you the carbon savings on the different measures as well, which is, again, very important when applying for grants. And then the other thing is that it's a list of things to do. Some of the things they recommend are quite basic, change light bulbs to more efficient ones, all the way up to very expensive measures such as internal or external wall insulation. So I can give you a little bit of a checklist of things you can do over the coming years to make your building more energy efficient. And then the last thing it will highlight is things that need fixing, so building maintenance tasks. Just from going around different community buildings and doing energy surveys, by far the most common thing I see is, blocked gutters, or sometimes broken gutters, or maybe downpipes off of gutters that are broken or become dislodged. And you can usually tell that it's been there for a while because there's usually a large, dark, damp patch on the wall where the water's been running down the wall. If that's left for long enough, then that water is going to find its way into a building. So things like that, fixing seals on windows and doors, maybe where you've got a door that isn't aligned properly and you've got gaps around the sides of the doors. These things will also be highlighted in the report as well. Now, what are the limitations of an energy report? It's really important to say that it is a simplified version of how to decarbonize your buildings. Some of the complexity from doing a full building retrofit, it's impossible to put that into a report. The report would be 3,000 pages long if you had all different, possible things you could do in a building and how they might impact each other. Just to give you an example, that solar calculation showing that you'd save £6,000 a year is based on the fact that they're currently spending £10,000 a year on the building. If they were to insulate the walls, install new windows, do a few other things to reduce energy demand, and they have their electricity bill from 10 to 6, well, they're no longer going to save £6,000 on their solar array because they only spend 5, right? So some of the measures in the report, if you do them, will affect some of the other measures in the report. So do bear that in mind. It's giving you a simple picture of the building. Some of the measures will build on each other. Some of the changes you make will negatively affect some of the other things you might do. Some of the other things will build on them. A great example of things that work well together would be internal wall insulation and double or triple glazing. Heat wants to escape out of the building through the easiest way possible. If you've got single glazed windows in a building with maybe a single layer of brick, the easiest way for the heat to escape is through the windows. If you change the windows for double glazing but keep just a single layer of brick, now the easiest way for the heat to escape is through the wall. So you can calculate that through doing double glazing, it'll save you a certain amount of energy. But as soon as you do it in, more of the energy will be lost through the walls and you won't get the full benefit of that measure. But if you insulate the wall and do double glazing together, it's they build on each other and you'll save more in total than just doing the individual measures. But the report, just to be simple, to be readable, to be understandable, shows measures in isolation. So the report is a starting point. It's a way for you to apply for grants, for further funding, to then be able to pay, professional builders, energy efficient experts, energy efficiency experts, to actually work out, the best order or the best combination of measures to make your building as energy efficient as possible. So the first question after doing an energy report is what measures should we do, or even what measures should we start with? And the obvious answer is you should do all of them. Like if you want your building to be as energy efficiency as possible, if you want your carbon emissions to be as low as possible, do all of them, absolutely. But also nobody's forcing you to do anything. So you don't have to do anything at all either. You can take the energy report and decide that, for whatever reason, budget, time or effort, you're not going to do any of the things in the report. But if you are going to start, where should you start? What are the things you should do first? In the report, there is a list of low or no cost things you can do. Adjusting thermostats, draft proofing, maybe lagging pipes in your bathrooms and your kitchens. All of these things will save you energy. All these things will cost either nothing or a very small amount of money. So those are usually good places to start. Once you've done that, once you start looking at the things that you actually have to find grants to do, the sort of large capital items, usually loft insulation will give you the fastest payback period. A lot of heat rises, it wants to go up. If your loft is completely uninsulated, the heat is going to escape straight through the roof. So loft insulation, if you have none, is usually a good place to start. There's also a question of what should you avoid doing first? This is a difficult thing to answer because it will be different for every building. But just to give you an illustration, if you've got a plan to insulate a building, insulate the walls, put new windows in, insulate the loft, change the heating system, okay? If you were to start by changing the heating system, the first thing you would do is probably replace all the radiators, and then you decide you want to internally insulate the walls. You're going to have to take the radiators off, put the insulation in, and put the radiators back on the wall. So you want to think about the sequencing of things and make sure you're not doing something that'll need to be redone when you do a later addition. And the other thing as well is, you size the heating system for the heat lost out of the building. So if you install the heating system first, your building might have an energy loss of 20 kilowatt peak. So you'd have a 20 to 25 kilowatt boiler. If you insulated the building fully, maybe the heat demand would go down to 10 kilowatts. So now your boiler is twice as big and twice as expensive as it would need it have been. So usually we recommend people to do fabric measures first, so insulating the building, then ventilation improvements, because as soon as you insulate a building, you change the way air moves through the building, then the heating system, and then finally, last, the renewables, because you want to size the renewables for the new energy demand of the building after you've done your retrofit. Having said that, I do fully recognise that, if you can get a grant to do a particular measure, like maybe solar panels and a battery, and it's ready available, why wouldn't you do that first? So if there's a particular grant you're after and it's just for one particular measure and you're successful, then you would absolutely do it in that order. But do think through some of the implications for future stages of your retrofit, that you don't do things that you have to undo or redo when you do later bits of the building. So in terms of making best use of the energy report, I always recommend that you meet as a group and read through the main bits of the report together. What you might find is that as an individual, you might have a really good understanding of heating systems because you've maybe had a new boiler or a heat pump installed in your house. There might be another member of your team that's maybe installed solar panels. And if you're lucky, there's another member of your team who's maybe recently done some renovations and the builder's added a bit of insulation. So as a group, you're always going to have more knowledge than you have as individuals. So do read through the report together. Mark all the bits that you're interested in. Take notes of things that you feel you need more help with as well. The Eich program does offer mentorship. So if there are bits that you need help with, then a mentor will help you think through all of the different measures, help identify which ones sort of make the most sense for your particular building, and help you prioritize and plan things, and hopefully as well help you identify grants that you can go for to actually pay for some of these measures. And then make a plan of all of the things you want to do in your building. Go look for grants to pay for them. And don't worry if you can't find a big enough grant to do everything. Start from the top, the things you've identified as being most important and the things that need doing first, and work your way through the list. It's often easier to get a grant if you've had a grant, if you know what I mean. It's sort of, you've demonstrated that you can deliver a project. And so having that sort of history of having done a few small grants can often help you get some of the larger grants as well. And as I've said already, do use the report when applying for grants. They'll quite often allow you to attach extra documents, the quotes and so on to the grant applications. But if not, ask if you can send it as further information by email as well. Because it will demonstrate, the payback period of the measures, the carbon saving of the measures, and the fact that you've had an external third-party person come and sort of look in depth at what's needed in your building. So how do you get an energy report if you don't have one already? The Eich service did provide energy reports, but unfortunately that's now come to an end. I think the budget for that has run out. WCVA have done grants in the past, although they did have some minimum energy amount of money per year spent on energy for that. So it wasn't really suitable for smaller groups. Coalfields also do funded reports, so they have done in the past if you're within their service areas. I've had groups who've had a grant from their local authority. I'm thinking of a few groups in the Powys area that had grants through their local authorities. And I've got at least one customer who's paid for an energy report through Ambition North Wales, which is the growth Deall regions. They cover the whole of Wales. Swansea Bay City Deall, for example, isn't a city Deall. It also covers Pembrokeshire. Same with Cardiff. It also covers large parts of the valley. So do check on their website or maybe send them an email and ask if they also do energy reports for groups as well. You can pay for it yourself, but I would strongly advise you not to if you possibly can. Try your best not to, because there are grants out there if you do look hard enough. And then the last thing you could do is a do-it-yourself energy survey. There is a document on the Community Buildings Hub on how to calculate carbon. And there's also a template for doing a do-it-yourself energy survey. It's based on the Centre for Sustainable Energy's document template, and it's guidance notes really to help community groups make use of that quite general template for your specific use case. Hopefully that's given you an overview of what's in an energy report, how I usually recommend groups sort of work their way through an energy report, and some of the questions that come out after people have read their energy reports. Yeah, that's more or less it from myself. I guess it's over to yourselves. Do people have any questions they'd like to ask? I'm just going to have to stop sharing so that I can see the chat as well. Okay. I'm interested. Have people here had energy reports? Have you had a chance to look through your energy reports? Or are people sort of more interested in getting an energy report? Where are you all at?
I'm working with some groups. Some of them have got energy reports and others are seeking them. So it's interesting to know where they can get them from. Or possibly get them from. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it used to be quite widely available from a few different parts. I think whoever was funding this, probably Welsh governments, maybe UK governments, some of that money is coming to an end. So it is becoming harder. But yeah, do check some of those different organisations I listed. Yeah.
Okay. Do you know anybody who's done the DIY energy survey?
I don't personally. I wrote the document on how to do it, and I tried to base it on how I actually do the energy report. It's obviously not going to be as comprehensive as getting a third-party person who's a buildings expert in, but it's just, it's about the stuff like calculating how much you spend on energy per year. A little bit of time with Excel. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
how to translate that into carbon as well can be tricky, but once someone's explained it to you, it's not so bad. And really, those are the two big things that the grant funding agencies want to look at is what are your bills? How is this saving money? What carbon is being saved? So I think the DIY reports can definitely help with some of those bits. Yeah. The groups that you have that have had energy reports, Corinne, have they found it helpful, or are the bits they've sort of struggled with?
Yes, helpful in identifying, because without anything, it's like, well, everything he's doing. Where do we even start?
Yeah.
And so it gives a place to work from, as you said, and they're coming together and going, okay, well, what are our priorities? What makes sense to do in a particular order here? And then other groups, is just like you said, the funding's there. Well, we've only got 6 months to apply for this funding, and then it's going. So we're just going to do that because that's the need.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. The other thing I forgot to mention as well is, obviously, structural problems need to be dealt with first. It's silly to sort of think about putting in solar panels on a roof where you need a new roof. But yeah,
there's a group I spoke to yesterday that is exactly that. Yeah, they need to do the roof. It's only just strong enough as it is.
Yeah,
and so it needs to be replaced.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, but hopefully, the reports will highlight that as well. The person doing the survey will hopefully have asked questions and will highlight the fact that a new roof might be needed.
What they're hoping is that they probably couldn't get new money for a new roof, but if that's part of a bid that's to improve sustainability, they have found funds around for that. So as part of the whole thing, they're going to apply for the new roof because they can't have the solar panels without it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm pretty sure, if I remember, I did read somewhere in the fine detail of the Ynni Cymru grant that you could apply for enabling works to do the energy efficiency measure. And obviously, fixing a roof is mandatory before you can put solar panels on the roof. Quite often they'll have some sort of language in there that, you can't spend £400,000 on a new roof to put a £10,000 solar array. They'll want it to be within certain percentages of the total value. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is a good way of getting some of those things done. Yeah, and again, things like external wall insulation as well. If the outside of a building, needs sort of maybe removing some render and putting something new on. There's water coming in, water ingress into the building. External wall insulation can sort of seal up a building and make it more energy efficient, but also fix some of those underlying problems as well. So yeah. Great, thank you.
Hey, Albert.
Hi, Sean.
I have a very specific question about North Wales, so I'm not sure if any of the groups here from North. You had just mentioned Ambition North Wales. Was it quite a big project audit they funded, or was it quite a small one? What was the scale that they were looking to do the audit for?
The particular project was for quite a large building. I helped the group put the grant application, for the energy survey together, and I don't remember there being any language about minimum sort of energy bills. So it's worth checking. It's worth asking the question. Yeah, they might score it such that smaller groups would naturally fall off, but it's worth asking the question, I think.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
I think with that grant, there's a sort of minimum sort of range that they want to. I think if I remember right, I was at the launch event. It was around minimum of 20k or so. I know it's quite large. It's quite they're expecting it's quite large.
Yeah, they're offering grants for community organisations. The grant itself, you have to spend up to minimum whatever it is, £15,000-20,000. But this particular grant was a different one, and it was a grant specifically to do energy reports to get groups ready to apply for the bigger grant. I don't know if it's still running. I haven't checked. But it was a grant to get a grant, if that makes sense. So I guess they'd identified that lots of community groups didn't have energy reports. They couldn't evidence that the things that that you were applying for grants were needed. So they offered energy report grants. Yeah. Well, thinking through it, it's also possible it could have been very much a time constraint thing. It could have been that they had money to do like, half a dozen. I don't know, but yeah, I think it's definitely worth emailing and asking. They might run that again. They might still be running. But yeah.
I wonder if anybody else here, there's a few of us on the call, know of any funding, any grants or any support that they've had that's been helpful so they could share with the others.
Yeah. Do you mean specifically for energy reports or?
Energy reports, or then afterwards, how to get funding. If there's any particular funds that you know of, might just be local to you, but yeah, in general, something I've not seen anybody get, but I've been looking into a little bit, was the boiler upgrade scheme, and I don't know if that's still running. I think a few things at the end of March have stopped and then haven't been announced yet, or there's things in the pipeline, but I don't know what they are yet.
Yeah, the boiler upgrade scheme is still running. I think it will be running for a number of years, and it's £7,500 off of a cost of it has to be a low carbon heating source, which essentially means a heat pump of some description. If you put in an air-to-air heat pump, I think the amount is less. I think it's 1,500 instead of 7.5. But an air-to-air heat pump is much cheaper than an air-to-water heat pump anyway. Yeah, so that's definitely still going. Yeah, I have a few suggestions, but I don't know if anybody else have applied for any grants that have been successful. Simon, I noticed you went off mute there, or?
Yes, I did notice one a week or two ago from Sport Wales for sports clubs and community buildings for energy efficiency. I've also seen in the national park here, Arolwg, they do grants as a council, community council. We got some money off them to do feasibility studies for a hydro scheme. And we also got money from Conwy Borough Council to complete some of those as well.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, thank you. I'd forgotten that Arolwg did that. Yeah, I live in Dolgella, and I know of one other group locally who've had money off of them as well. Yeah, thanks for highlighting that. Yeah, did the hydro thing work out? Are you sort of moving forward with it, or?
We've run into a problem with NRW. We've completed all the surveys, and we needed an abstraction license from NRW, and we've been speaking to them and had site visits for over a year. And all of a sudden last week they said it had to go out to tender. So we as a community council now have to tender for a hydro scheme we wanted to put in our village. It seems a bit ridiculous, but that's the rules. So we can't actually apply for planning permission until we tender for our own scheme, manage to get it, and then can get the abstraction license. So it's put us back quite a long way.
Yeah. Okay. It's an interesting one. Yeah. But that's a good call. That the national parks also do grants for these sort of surveys as well.
Worth mentioning, we can talk about sort of finding grants and so on, that we have a webinar coming up in July, later in July, focusing on that specific issue that we we've got the actual date for it. I can dig it out.
Is it the 16th?
Yes. Yeah, 16th, which is 2 weeks today at 1 o'clock.
There is a document on the Community Buildings Hub as well on finding grants. It's got a list of different places you can look for grants through Wales. And it's also got some tips about, where to look rather than just pointing you at specific grants. I've had a lot of groups be quite successful with the Ynni Cymru grants. It's closed now, but they sort of open usually March time and they close sort of end of May. You have to put in generation, so solar and maybe some batteries, and you also have to include consumption. So you would have to include a heat pump as part of that project as well. But that's 100% grant as well. So that's quite a good one to look at. And then Ambition North Wales and the other growth fund deals also have grants, but they tend to need match funding. But those are also worth looking at. And then there's others out there as well. Yeah.
Elvin, I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, thanks, John. Get the chat up. Just while we're waiting for John to finish, the other place that I just thought of as well is there's quite a few of these schemes around, if people are affected by like a new incinerator plant as well. That's another place you might want to check for energy reports as well. So if you do have unfortunate enough to have a incinerator plant going near you, these often do have some grants for community groups to do different measures as well.
On that point also, land tips and any wind farms.
Yeah, indeed, yes. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Do tendering requirements apply across the board, or do different schemes have different requirements? Yeah, that's a really good question, John. Different grant programs do have different tendering requirements, but usually if you're above a certain amount, you will need to put it out to tender. What that means is different for every grant. I've found that if you go over about £10,000, they want you to get 3 quotes. There is a scheme called Sell to Wales, where you can essentially post your particular job up on the board, and then anyone who wants to apply applies through the Sell to Wales board, and that sort of fully meets all Welsh Government's tendering requirements. But it is quite bureaucratic. It takes ages to get the thing on Sell to Wales. I'm not sure what it costs. I think it's free for community groups, but I'm not sure. And I think as well, the last time I did this, we had to do it through Gwynedd Council. So Gwynedd Council was the agent, if you like, who actually posted it on Sell to Wales. But you don't have to do that. As long as you can demonstrate that you're meeting the tendering requirements that the grant gives out, you can just put it out to local companies. As long as you if they say you need 3 quotes, that you get 3 quotes. If they say you need 5, that you get 5. As long as you meet the requirements, you should be okay. And usually they're quite good, particularly if you live in really rural areas and it's a small enough job that it's not going to attract big companies. You can essentially ask for their help in justifying that you can only find 2 quotes, say. So I would definitely just talk to the grant funding agency about what their tendering requirements are, and then just follow them, as closely as you can. And then just keep talking to them so that if you do hit any snags, if you can't find enough quotes, that they're sort of helping you along the way. Usually people struggle with They think they need three quotes for the grant to apply for the grant. That's a lot more. That's a lot rarer. You usually just a quote for each measure, just to sort of demonstrate that you've done your homework and that you're asking for you're not just sort of thinking of a figure. Is usually enough to apply for the grant, but do make sure that you read the paperwork that comes with the grant as well, just in case they happen to be one of those few that ask for more. So get a quote to apply for the grant. When you've got the grant, talk to them about what they need from you in terms of the tendering stuff. The other thing I would say as well is you don't have to always go for the cheapest quotes, right? But you do have to justify if you're going for a more expensive one. So if you are putting things out to tender, make sure you do include questions on there to do with quality. So, if you're insulating a wall, are they pre-plastering? Are they painting? Is there a warranty included with the work? Usually these schemes comes with sort of a builder's warranty of a few years, or there might be an insurance warranty that lasts longer. So that if you do get a quote that doesn't offer any of those things, but it happens to be the cheapest one, and you're a little bit worried, and maybe there was one slightly more expensive where they do offer a long warranty. If you've asked those questions in the tender, then you can sort of explain that to the grant funding agency why you're not going with the cheapest quote. If you haven't asked any of those questions, often they will want you to go for the cheapest quote. So do think through exactly what you want out of whatever measure you're doing, and ask questions to make sure that you can score things for quality, not just for the price. Does that help, John? Does that answer your question? Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
I've got some related comments on that as well, based on some groups that we're working with here. Initially getting the quotes has been quite hard. We've got really rural areas, and people some local builders don't have the time because they're already at capacity. So asking them to do a quote where they might not get the work has been challenging. Another group that used somebody much further away to install an air source heat pump, but when issues arose, they were on the other side of the country. They're in southeast England. So that was, they had been cheaper, but the ongoing maintenance was an issue. And there have been a few groups near us where the air source heat pumps haven't worked, or they've failed relatively quickly, and they didn't have a maintenance something ongoing. So I think absolutely what you said there about getting something where you've got something long term, and be prepared to push for it if it's not forthcoming. We've got another group who really had 18 months after installation, loads of things on it failed, but they had somebody, one of the trustees was really experienced in that side of things, and kept on going until they got everything repaired. Don't be afraid to keep on asking, I think was their advice.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's really helpful. The other thing I found is it is easier to get quotes once you have a grant, because there's a real project with real money. But getting those initial quotes to help you get the grant can be a struggle. Getting 3 quotes after the fact can be a struggle in some parts of the country as well, but getting 1 quote to get a grant is really tricky. You can use some of the pricing in the energy report to justify if you're really struggling to find a quote. But do try and find some way of putting language to that effect into the grant application. Say we tried and we tried and we tried, we couldn't get quotes. But as you can see, the energy report has said that this measure should cost that, right? For the project in Barmouth, we asked for £48,000 for the solar. We got £48,000. We spent £48,000. So we went with exactly the figure that was in the energy report. We didn't get someone to quote for the application. Once we had that £48,000, it was a lot easier to convince people to come and measure the roof and price the thing up.
Another slightly related one. We know somebody got a quote, and they saw who they thought was commissioning the work, and they put in a very, very high amount. This was for some cabling, I think, like thousands, a huge amount that the group, there's no way they could afford it. So the group went back and said, oh, no, you're not who we think we are. This is who we are. This is what we want doing. And they said, oh, right, okay. In that case, we thought you were somebody else. We thought you were a big energy company. So we're going to change our pricing.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. 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 And, you know, one good thing about community buildings is, you know, everyone's dad or aunt or uncle is, you know, doing yoga or doing something. And so it's, yeah, getting sort of small local builders that, you know, who know the building, who know people that use the building. Yeah, that's all often a good approach as well. But yeah. You definitely don't want them to think you're Scottish Power asking for a quote. Yeah. Simon, thank you. You sent me an email about the hydro scheme. Thanks for that. Yeah. Do we have any other questions?
Those who are anywhere near Ynys Môn, there is a in-person meeting, open public meeting that Elfed is again going to be leading in where is it again in Anglesey?
In Hen Ysgol Bodorgan, Bodorgan, not far from Llangefni.
Yeah, so that's next Wednesday at 10 o'clock. And yeah, so you'll put the link in the chat here if anyone's interested in going along to that, finding a little bit more about it. And then, like we said, 2 weeks today, we have another webinar, and that will be about more focusing in on how to find that grants and funding and so on for your community building measures. So that's 1 o'clock on the 16th. So thanks, Elfed. Thanks everyone for coming. Hope you found it useful. We'll be making the recording available online, and yeah, good luck with all your projects on your buildings, and yeah, do get in touch. There's the Eich online community has a community buildings hub discussion space as well, which you're very welcome to post up questions in there. So there's one from Paul, I think you put one up there recently, so hopefully you'll get a response. I don't know if Elfed, you get a chance to see that as well. But yeah, maybe I'll just put a link to that in the chat now as well, if I can quickly find it. There we go. So there's a few resources up there, or links to things too, but it's primarily a discussion space. Yeah, and if you're not already a member of the Eich online community, you can just click that link and request access, and we'll grant it. But yeah, it's basically a space for anyone taking action on the climate change in Wales at the community level. And that particular space in there is about community buildings. Okay, well, we're a little bit over, so maybe we should call it a day. Thanks, everyone. Diolch yn fawr. And yeah, maybe see you again at another session.